Well, good morning, good evening, or good night, depending on where everybody is in the world today. And welcome to another deep dive with Laura Bellet as we continue discussing the science of empowerment. And I'm very excited for today's episode. Well, I say that about every episode, but I'm really excited about today's episode because I finally started the book and I'm 4 chapters in. And obviously, as Laura knows already, I have quite a number of questions around that I'd love to dive into. But Laura, how are you doing today?
I am fabulous. Thank you. And as always, so excited and honored to be a part of everything that you are creating and the whole wellness team behind you and what we're bringing to the global community. It's amazing. And I really hope we can
Mm,
grow this audience and really help bring everyone along and
for sure.
advance and just really help each other become the very best versions of ourselves. And this is how we do it.
Absolutely. And in line with that, if you want to stay up to date on what is going on our channels, whether you're watching this on Facebook or watching this on Laura's channel or watching it on the WLC channel, please make sure to like and subscribe. That's the bell button below the video, just so that you are able to keep up to date on when we release new content, which is usually every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central European Time currently. And yeah, I think we're off to a great start on our journey. So, without further ado, I'm going to grill Laura today about my thoughts and ideas and questions around what I've read so far. The first thing that really jumped out right at the beginning of the first chapter, or not right at the beginning, but it's about halfway through, it talks about the need for consistent self evaluation. And I love the way that that is framed because it's essentially saying that, and this is my take on it, please correct me if I am wrong, but my take on it was the reason we need that consistent self evaluation is because we really are an amalgam of programming around us that's constantly coming at us. So our perceptions of events and ideas and all the rest of it is so easily influenced by what we're experiencing around us that it really requires a lot of being present in the moment to be able to sit back and go, okay, is this actually what is going on? Or is this just my perception? That was kind of how I took it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts from the author's perspective.
Yes, well, thank you. As always, I love the questions. And the beauty of the science of empowerment is exactly what you just said. Your take, not even your perception. It is the information coming in and circulating within your internal system. So, however you read those words, the energy, that is yours. It is correct alignment. And this is what I love about the book. It really is not me telling you anything, it is you reflecting back really what we already know, but because of this patterning and this influence, and what I really feel is this algorithm of other people's projection, we
Mm,
become this outcome of everyone else's story. And fortunately and unfortunately, it starts when we're very little. Honestly, I believe right when we're in the womb, because our mother's energy and the way she moves through the process of our experience in the womb, and then even all of the energies around us while we're in there, then when we come out, and then when we really hit that awareness to someone saying no, good, bad, right, wrong, do this, hear this, listen to this, it really begins there. And what I feel is that our journey as a self actualized person, the earlier we can tap into it, the less damaged we will become. And that was part of the drive to write this book. And I don't mean damaged in uh, in a black and white format, okay, or a structure. It's just our parents tend not to do the work necessary
Mm,
to raise us in an environment that is conducive to our highest and best self, because their parents didn't do the work. And so we can see this cyclical nature of how things are passed down and they begin to form our own sense of identity and self. And so we really just become what society shows us. Again, right? Spiritual leaders, religion, politics, but it really for me begins in the home. And that is not to fault anyone, because we know as we grow, we really do the best we can, and we are only equipped with what has been given to us. But what I've tried to do with this material is to spark a hunger and a passion for our own self actualization, i.e., our own empowerment. So even if we were raised in an environment where something inside of us has always known it was off or it wasn't right, that we begin to search out what feels like correct alignment for ourselves. So
right.
I hope that helps. It's There's a lot to get in there because it starts so far back. But for our audience, let me just say that where you are now in this given moment, you can begin to heal and redesign the architecture of thought in your own mind and really begin to construct and build and create something very different than where you are in this moment of time.
There's so much there as usual
I
that
know.
I'd love to unpack. But first of all, the book does exactly that. It really does ignite that spark, to want to become a self-actualized being. Because straight from right off the bat, you start to realize within the first couple of sentences, for people who haven't read the book as yet, you really start to realize that that nagging sense of there has to be more
Yeah.
that most people do have, no matter where you are in your journey in life, everybody has this kind of nagging feeling that this can't be it. This can't be all that there is. Um, and this book, within the first couple of sentences, really does bring home that, okay, this isn't all there is. And if you want, you can become a fully self actualized person. Which then brings me into my next question, because there's a lot of talk about the positivity and the shifts and all of that in the book. But one of the things that jumped out at me, because it's something that I really struggle with, it spoke about at some point you learn how to release the negative emotions. Now, for me, that is incredibly difficult and very hard. Um, I've only just probably in the last year or two learned to do my forgiveness exercises truly and deeply, to the point where I can forgive someone and let go of any animosity that I may have felt towards them or towards the situation or whatever the case may be. Um, but definitely release is, I think, for a lot of people, the hardest part.
Mhm.
Also because, and this is my take on it, especially if you're not just releasing anger or jealousy or anything like that, if you're releasing sadness,
Mm.
oftentimes you don't want to release it because it feels like you're cheapening the trauma.
Mm.
It feels as though you're forgetting that loss that may have occurred to you in whatever shape or form that might be. But of course, we know, and I'm sure you do get into this further in the book as well, you can't actually, I'm being silly. I know you do because it's in chapter 3. But if you don't release, you can't make room for the positivity to come in.
Yeah.
But yet, and I do still feel this, it almost feels like I'm cheating on myself if I let that positivity come in. I'd love to hear your take on that and what your thoughts are around that sort of, I won't even call it negative self-talk. I'm not really sure what to call it, but that limiting belief.
Yeah. So again, every question and every answer is this universal space, and we could talk for lifetimes on this. It's so important and to condense it in, but we do our best. So I'm excited for this. So I would never be so bold as to say when there is trauma, and we've talked about this, sadness,
Mm-hmm.
when there are fundamentally deep issues, there are modalities that are needed to be put in place. So when you and I talk, it is never to dismiss someone's pain and trauma, or
Right.
just, as you said, self-talk and just negative belief, a negative belief system. What I'm going to say to that is look at the reasons why we are partnering up with drama and chaos. Why are we putting the energy into that relationship within ourselves? So you said something to the effect of if there's trauma or negativity, there's a part of you, and we'll speak you in broad terms, that doesn't really want to let it go, and there are some upfront thoughts about it. I feel like I'm cheating on it. I feel like I'm diminishing the experience. If I forgive and let go so quickly, well, then what does that experience mean to me? So I think as we allow ourselves to dive in deeper to what would it look like if I were to let this go? Let the answer come up and be less in fear of the answer and more excited in the process of learning to see what it feels like to begin to look at it differently. So, for instance, I would like personally for you and for everyone that's listening, no longer say the word difficult or hard. At our neuromuscular training facility, where we run the entire program of the science of empowerment, we do not use those words. We use the word challenge. This is challenging for me at this moment in time. When we say difficult and hard, it attaches an energy to longevity. When you say challenging at this time, it signals into the mind, the biology, and the consciousness that I can overcome a challenge. And this
Mm-hmm.
is something temporary. Then we have to go into learning why we are dragging out that temporary thought and that temporary attachment. And that's where the work really begins. So then you insert something like the science of empowerment, where we can actually run through a formula that helps us begin to dissolve that attachment. So I'd like again to pose this question for everyone right now facing a challenge and pick one. Why are you attached to it? If you had the power to dissolve that attachment, literally like that, how would you do it? Because you can do it. It is in you. There is no process on this earth that justifies staying attached to anything that is causing you trauma, pain, discomfort, disruption for a long period of time. There really isn't. The human condition has fooled us into thinking we need to suffer. And even if we pick up, right, if we even go into Christianity, I'll use that as an example, right? Jesus on the cross and the whole story of the suffering. And then the church tells us he suffered for us. We must suffer for others. Why? If there were an a civilization that was far more advanced, do you think they would be suffering? No, they
No.
would have found a way to recalibrate the challenges very quickly and through technology, through mental telepathy, through knowledge, whether it's ancient or advanced. They would find ways to keep growing and evolving in self actualization, reflection, therefore, one another. I'm not saying remove an initial experience of acknowledging something that has caused hardship or heartache. I'm saying that you have the ability to look at it, understand that it's here to teach you what it is to move through it rather than stay with it.
Right. And that is, I think, one of the most difficult things because, and I like the fact that you're bringing up those points about the attachment literally being the words that we use, right? So this is difficult, this is very hard for me right now, are all things that we do. And like you say, it does attach this idea of longevity, that this problem might never go away, kind of a thing. Whereas if we say this is challenging right now, well, we've all faced challenges and we've overcome them, right? And a challenge, more often than not, in today's day and age, is considered fun, right? You have all these little challenges that you do. So it does also attach just that little change in vocabulary is able to then attach a slightly different meaning to what we're going through. Again, not trying to dismiss severe
Right.
trauma or anything like that.
No. And it
Um,
also changes the energetic structure of thought and how the thought messages throughout the body. Trauma, difficult, hard, actually settles in the cellular messaging system.
mhm,
And then it comes out in ill health. And if we begin to look at our time here is about advancement. It is about evolution, elevation, and nothing else. We all have very unique pathways of what that looks like. If you could suspend the attachment to your situation and look at it more as a classroom, and the lesson is the instructor and getting the lesson quickly allows you to advance to the next classroom, the next level. Find the joy for a moment that the struggle, the discomfort is only here to teach us to reconnect to our higher self, thus, the ability to own our own empowerment. Become attached to our growth rather than non growth. Become attached to the pattern of evolution rather than stagnation and hardship, negativity, difficulty, and holding on to past trauma keeps us locked and chained into a state of non movement, stagnation. We are so much more than that. It really is learning a skill set and the mastery of learning how to recalibrate from that patterned thinking to exploration of empowerment. It's just side by side. We just get more easily absorbed in the negative path. It's just something in the human condition. But there are pioneers and visionaries and authors and students of life that are starting to awaken to see the difference. And that is what you and I are trying to do, to just put a gentle thought of positive influence into the mindset that if you are facing a challenge, the science of empowerment will remind you it is here for a fleeting moment for you to move on.
there was something you said earlier that kind of leads me into my next point, but also links very beautifully with what you just said about moving forward and about releasing trauma and about releasing challenges as well. And that was to be able to acknowledge it for what it is. Because so often we, and this is what we originally were talking about around constant self evaluation, what I know I do and what a lot of my clients do, and I think it's just a human nature thing as well, is we do blow things up bigger than they actually are.
Mhm.
And I'm reminded of Stoic philosophy in that a lot of people think Stoicism was almost self-destructive in that, oh, you just accept everything for what it is. But no, Stoicism was actually about recognizing things for what they are, not what we think they might be or what they may become, but just the present moment, so that we can take an empowered step forward. And this is, I think, where the science of empowerment really takes that philosophy to new heights. But then, of course, and keeping in line with the whole idea of stoicism, and I mentioned to you before we started our podcast today, that the words "know thyself" were engraved above the school, Plato's school of philosophy.
Right.
And I noticed in the book that you talk about really getting to that point where you actually do know yourself, but how important it is to be self-actualized first before you get to know yourself. Because again, everything around us is built to impress itself upon us,
Right.
right? It's the media, it's entertainment, it's just constant noise all the time, bombarding us with who we should be, what we should look like, how we should dress, what we should eat, where we should work out, should we work out? It just, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And it is so easy to then just become a configuration of what the world wants us to be.
Right.
But then, of course, true power comes from really knowing yourself because, and again, this is my perception of, or my take on what was said. It comes from knowing yourself because then you're able to make decisions based on truth,
Yeah.
authenticity, without any sense of judgment, guilt, anger.
Yes.
And I actually remember where I was at a point a couple of years back where I reached for a very brief moment in time, I probably think about a month or so, where I think I was actually a self-actualized person. And it was so interesting that I was able to then make decisions that I knew would impact and hurt other people, but I was okay to do it anyway because I knew that my intention was not to hurt these people. Their perception of my choices
Right.
was what was causing them pain. And it's just this is what really struck me because I'm like, that is what it's all about. That is what empowerment is, where you're able to go, no, I don't have to take on other people's challenges.
Right.
I can simply appreciate my choices for what they are. And that I think is an incredibly powerful place to be.
And not being afraid anymore of losing connections to people that maybe don't want to advance at this moment, and how we halt our own advancement to stay attached to certain situations, conditions, and people. Sometimes, it is a challenge when you start to become self-actualized. And I don't mean that word like in a like as a platitude, like, oh, I'm self-actualized. This is a very humble experience, very humbling experience. This is really about learning that when we connect to ourselves in that specific way, and it's very unique for each person, at that moment is when we really begin to connect to the care and the consideration of humanity. It is not about being self actualized. So I am better than you. I know more than you. Look at me. I'm up here. Absolutely opposite. It really, God, I think about it. I can almost get a little emotional because we think when we arrive at that point, there's going to be, some magic to it. It really is connecting to the universal knowing that there are polarities in life, and there are going to be, and again, old conditioning, struggles, disruptions, discomfort, and all of that. The beauty of being in this human condition at this time in life, right, in all of our history, is that we are becoming more aware of the ability of thought, and how thought really can add or detract to the quality of our life. So when we are able to observe ourself in relation to the world around us, this is where we start to feel what, again, the path of empowerment looks like. And when you truly connect to the authenticity of that, there's one thing that happens. All you want to do is help others. It's all you want to do because you see that it is not about self, really. It is about us. But we cannot connect to the whole of the global family until the I is acknowledged and the proper experience has been adjusted, if that makes any sense there.
It does. And there is something I want to bring up around that, around wanting to help others, because that is very true. That's exactly what happens. You know, the moment you start to get down this path and start to really see how you're making these incredible strides in your life and how much peace it brings you, you then do want to share that same peace with others. But my challenge with that has always been, where do you draw the line between, you know, becoming preachy,
Yes.
where you're going up to everyone and going, oh, you have to try this new thing that I'm doing, which has just changed my life and it's absolutely incredible, and you have to do it. You have to do it. It's going to change your life. Versus, you know, rather just living, well, something that I tried for a while was just to try living by example. And that did have a slight effect, but not maybe to the extent that I would have wanted to have had it. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, so many things quick came up right there. So when we begin to experience advancement, growth, elevation, whatever the word fits right inside your being, we do want to just explode with expansion, all of this knowledge and happiness and positive movement to everyone we know because we know what it feels like to heal, to move forward, to let go and resolve those disruptions, those challenges that we've actually moved through and mastered. We've done it. So we want to give other people that information. So someone like me, I wrote this book because everywhere I went, this is all I talked about. It wasn't talking about the book, it was talking about the acknowledgement of empowerment and what self-observance and self-actualization felt like and what I experienced for myself. And I hit that same thing, and we all do. It's like being, a senior in college versus a senior in a master's program, right? The wisdom and the insight and the brilliance that we have gained, we want to impart to others because we understand that it's helpful and it's needed. What I have found is if we are doing something to have an impact or an effect on others, and we're not reflecting back quite what we want to see, that is the key for us going deeper into that next phase of our own advancement. Why am I wanting maybe a reflection back? Why am I wanting that person or that condition to change so that I know I've grown? This brings us really deep into authenticity. We go on this path only for ourselves. And when we are fully living in it, which I believe takes an entire lifetime to do,
Mhm.
the people and situations around us will do one of two things. They will personally rise to their next level of elevation, and we will align, or we let them go, or we accept that I am just on a different path at a different time, and I still love or respect or admire what they are all about. So, for instance, I just worked on with this on a client, a partner that's in a very difficult situation, difficult with an alcoholic partner. And you can imagine when one is growing, meditating,
Mm.
eating well, exercising, and the other is drinking consistently. There's going to come a time when there really isn't anything left to do until that alcoholic is willing to heal the reasons why they are experiencing alcoholism.
Right.
Right? And then the other partner either will be patient and loving, and at a point, they will have to decide, this is not my path any longer. It will always come back to the individual and where we are willing to compromise and settle for a time until we know we are being nudged to take the next step forward.
I love that point about the reflection so that we have a knowing that, okay, we are on the right path.
Yes.
And that has often been something that I have struggled with, and something that I've actually spoken to my clients about as well. Just in general, when you upgrade your life, the biggest fear that we often have is the fear of success.
Yeah.
Because if you succeed in that upgrade, it's not necessary that everybody's going to upgrade with you.
Yeah.
And if you upgrade sufficiently, like you say, eventually there's just nothing left to talk about. You have nothing in common anymore because you're on two completely different wavelengths.
However, and I'm so sorry to interject,
Mm-mm.
what do you think will happen when you upgrade and present alignments dissolve? What do you think will take their place?
So what I learned at a very young age, but consciously not in my soul, I didn't know it. I just knew it in my mind, was that, oh, when that happens, then there'll be space in your life and nature abhors a vacuum. Therefore, other people will come in that are aligned energetically to your new path. And I struggled with that one, which actually we'll talk about in my last question today. I struggled with that for a very long time because I didn't want to lose the people around me, even though I was going through this transformation and this growth phase. And I just didn't trust that the universe would adhere to its own laws, essentially. But when those partnerships then started to dissolve on their own through no conscious effort of myself, exactly what we knew would happen happened, where suddenly I'm meeting people who are going, oh, I'm into yoga and self-actualization, and I meditate and I do this and I do that. And I'm like, where were you the last 20 years of my life? But it's because for me personally, I still find it difficult to trust universal law. I know it back to front, but it is incredibly difficult to just trust that, okay, if I do X, Y, Z, the following will happen. And I think that then, yeah.
Yeah, Stefan, I was going to say, and again, that's part of the human condition. So many of us come into an energetic, non-trusting environment, and that has many branches off of that tree. It doesn't mean we don't have love or food or shelter, but again, when we're wiring the brain to connect to the consciousness, to move throughout the biology of the body at such a young age, the messaging system for most of us is so off center and off balance. We learn to cope, but deep underneath those coping skills are those fundamentals. I don't trust. I am scared. I am attached to that person, even though something in my gut is telling me to run. I'm grabbing onto it even more. And I think as we grow, and even if there's one thought of exploration away from what we know is not aligned with our highest and best self, that is your personal doorway. Go in that direction, even while you're learning to adjust with the fear and the attachment of something negative. Keep building and growing towards what you know is your best while you are still struggling in that discomfort. So this is not about snapping your finger and moving from a negative environment to a positive in a second, even though quantum physics can tell you and will tell you we are all capable of that. We really
Yes.
are. And I want to seed everyone's mind with that. You do not have to stay in an unhealthy, unhealed environment any longer than you choose to stay.
I really like that point that you brought up about committing to forward movement,
Yes.
even whilst knowing that those belief systems are still there. Because
Yeah.
you're right, yes, from a quantum physics perspective, we should be able to just swap timelines and go into a place and existence where those limiting beliefs no longer exist. But because we have those limiting beliefs, we can't do it easily. um,
Not
and of
yet.
course, not yet, but we'll get there. And that's why it's so important to commit to that forward movement, because we do have this distorted perception of ourselves.
Yes.
We do have a perception that is very much linked to our story. And our story is not, and ladies and gentlemen, this is not me now, this is the book that I'm talking about, because the book says this. But our story is something that we very much do create. We don't, it's not, when I say it's not real, yes, certain things do happen to us, but our perception and the filters that we have in place will very much distort that reality to fit the perception that we have built up around that story.
And
And I know
we keep our attachment very well nurtured so that the story becomes the reason of why we are not, and fill in that blank. And that is where you begin that mastery, that self-actualized observance. My story, and then fill in, what does your story do for you? And why are you blocking the creation of a new story?
this is so powerful because, um, I mean, I mentioned to you at the outset that one of the things that kind of jumped out at me was the attachment to pain,
Yeah.
and for me, it's almost a love of trauma.
Yeah.
And for me, that limiting belief actually became a badge of strength and honor. Like,
Yes.
oh, look how much I'm able to take on. Look how much I'm able to go through. And it wasn't until the last 2 weeks that, with everything that happened with my father being rushed into hospital and all the rest of it, and my best friend's birthday was last week and he passed earlier this year. And it was just, it all came crashing down. And I just went, no, I'm going to excuse the gender specific term, but I'm going to man up and I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to get through it. I'm going to do my work that I need to do. And the pain will just be suppressed and all the rest of it, which was a very interesting coping mechanism because it's one that I don't ever prescribe to anybody else. And yet here I am, physician, heal thyself. Um, and it wasn't until one of my best friends actually sat me down and went, you've been through a lot, but have you ever actually just acknowledged it? Because you can't let it go until you acknowledge it for what it is. And my God, if it wasn't difficult to sit and actually work through it all, actually make a list of everything that I've been through and go, okay, so this happened. What was real and what wasn't? What have I built up in my mind? What was, awful and traumatic and all the rest of it? And what was actually good? What were the good things that came out of it?
Yeah.
To help myself to move forward. So in my case, very much an issue where I have that attachment to pain, not because I have a number of people who I've worked with in the past who do have an attachment to pain because they're actually addicted to the what's the word I'm looking for? The comfort that they get from other people going, oh, so sad, that's so horrible, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's their story.
That's their story, right? For me, I get a little bit of a thrill and a rush, and people go, "Oh my God, you survived all of that!
Yeah.
How are you still standing?" And I'm like, "Oh well, it's tough and it's a little bit of a self-deprecating, mindset and posture that I'll take. But inside, I'm congratulating myself because here's yet one more person telling me what an amazing job I've done." And then you do get stuck in that, and then you wait for the next trauma to arrive so that you can repeat that entire pattern all over again. Sorry, I just shared quite a bit there. Apologies.
Well, no, this is wonderful because this is the humanity of us. We all can relate to this. And this is the beautiful reasoning for a podcast like this, for you and I in our alignment, and everyone that's going to listen and get something out of it. We become attached to the story. The story gives us purpose, it gives us meaning. And what I've tried to, well, I'm not going to say try to do, what I feel that I have done with the science of empowerment is to ask, what would your story now look like if you were to recalibrate it, shift it, the same energy, only in a more positive light or a more influencing way that would really uplift someone. So this is, I'm going to put this in this manner. If you were to talk to either your younger self, or let's say you had a child, however that child came to you, it doesn't matter. And you were now in the position of being that little human being's guide, would you tell him to take that badge of honor on? Would you support that story for him? Or what would it look like if you were this grand, beautiful sage of in life, and you were to give him the ability to take ownership of empowerment in a much different direction? I I think you would say there is a moment in time where sadness and struggle and discomfort and dissension and hardship has its place to teach us compassion, but not needed for your entire life. And that's kind of what I'm getting here.
That is such a, you've put that so beautifully because, and apologies in advance to any of our listeners who did not maybe come here for a more esoteric style of debate, but one of my guides said to me, it was at the end of last year, I specifically asked for just a general upgrade of self. I wanted to reach the next level in my evolution as quickly as possible. And I said, I'm ready for this now. And she goes, okay, but it's going to hurt. It's going to be far worse than anything you've ever experienced before. And I went, well, that's fine. I can handle it. There's that attachment to that pain, that love of trauma again. I can handle it. I can do this. I've got it. And she goes, okay, sure. And I said to her after, just sort of in passing, I went, but why does it have to hurt?
Right.
And she goes, it doesn't. You just haven't learned how to learn through anything but pain as yet.
Yeah.
But you'll get there.
And I was going to say too, for me, a little bit of the word love associated with trauma is very disaligned, right? And again, intellectually, I know you know that, but integrating it into your path of advancement is now where you are. So
Mm,
for again our listening, audience out here, when these challenges come on, and they can be very small to really massive life challenges, look at, if you put yourself in the position of being a highly advanced human being, just let your mind suspend the pattern and go into the creation of playing out the experience of being this self observant, self actualized, brilliant human being connected to all universal energies. How would you handle this situation? And your consciousness will tell you immediately. And in that space, I want you to observe the recognition of your potential. And then I want you to observe the recognition of the pattern. And in that struggle is where the genius lies.
I think we're going to end it off there because that was just beautiful.
Yeah.
That was just incredible. And already my brain is going in 1,001 different directions in terms of actually what I would like the last quarter of my year to look like
Yeah.
and how I can change my story into, one of real growth and combined with blessings and just really embrace that aspect because gosh darn it, it's everyone's right to have that.
It is our birthright. We have come here in a genius state, and it gets slated through the algorithms of patterns and behaviors, and then our personal story. And you and I are here to remind the world your story is yours. Become this empowered creator, rewrite it and live it the way that you would if you knew what you were truly capable of creating. And I am telling you, you are so beaming with brilliance, each and every one of us. Don't settle, keep advancing.
Brilliant. Laura, as always, an amazing discussion. I
Yes,
cannot wait for next week and the next 4 chapters of the book.
I know.
Yeah, I think this is just going to be so incredible. And I think we're giving the audience a really great overview of what they can expect from the book so that when they finally get it, they are able to put it into practice right away. So this is just incredible. Thank you so much for your time, as
You are
always.
so welcome. I think there's such a beautiful alchemy of the science and the consciousness and the humanness
Mm,
and instruction with compassion. And I love it. And I'm so excited for everyone to really use this time to grow and advance and heal and rewrite their story because I think it is amazing. It's amazing time for those that are aligning with us.
absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
Wonderful.
To our audience out there, just a quick note on the book. We've been going now for 47 minutes, and that was purely based off of all of 4 points that I made, one line points. And we've been talking for 45 minutes on this. This is how much information, how much knowledge, how much wisdom is in this book. So I really encourage everyone to get in touch with Laura, purchase the book if you haven't done so already. It's not to get preachy, but it really will change your life.
It does. It does. And
Absolutely.
yes. And again, and just like you and I are talking, when you go to the website, you order the book, you can reach out to me. Also, I'm here for everyone, each and every one of you. It's so important for all of us to really become the best version. And I mean that in the truest sense, so that we can be these beautiful sparks of healing, powerful energy running around this globe. I'm excited for everyone. So I really just, it's from my heart. The information is from my heart.
Beautiful. Just beautiful. Well, until next week, again, please everybody remember to like and subscribe, whether you're on Laura's channel or on the Wellness Lifestyle Conference. And we will see everybody same time, same place, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central European Time. Although, when are you guys putting your clocks back? Is that in a couple of weeks' time or?
Yeah, I don't, not yet. I'll have to let you know. I don't know
Okay.
either. I haven't looked at it. I think
All
we're
right.
okay.
So next week will still be same time, 9 a.m. and 3 p.m.
Yes.
Brilliant. Well,
Wonderful.
everyone, thank you so much for your time, and we will speak to you soon.
Bye.
Cheerio. Bye.